Hi, trade professionals. We are back with another weekly roundup. I have to be careful not to talk too loud or I'll get in trouble with my neighbors. You can leave that in. No one, whatever. Anyways, so yeah, today we have some fun articles. Oh, wait, sorry, I forgot. Lalo, Andy, it's a pleasure to talk to you and getting to ask you questions. We talk a little bit before the show, and I told them, you know what, I struggled with these articles. They were a little bit hard to read for me, hard to get the information or, just turn that information into something I could understand. And so I am so glad to have these two here, and they can definitely break it down for me. I have no doubt. So we're going to go straight in. Our first article, we are talking about USMCA, or should I say NAFTA, because the article says, gone but not forgotten, the continuing importance of NAFTA compliance. So this article went very deep into what happens, when compliant-wise, I would say. There's a lot of questions that I have, really. And a few questions of those were, what exactly is the SAT? That really reminds me of high school and gives me PTSD because in high school, that means something very different. It's like a standardized test. But here, it's a SAT questionnaire verifications for NAFTA, I believe. And so let's just begin there. What is this?
Okay. Well, you've got NAFTA that has ended, if you will, and replaced by the U.S.-Mexico-Canadian trade agreement. So USMCA, some call it NAFTA 2.0. But the original NAFTA trade agreement is still in effect. And from a compliance, you still have to look at it from a standpoint of verifying and validating goods that you are claiming NAFTA at your time of imports. And in this case, Mexico is looking at it, but you still have to comply with having your proof that the goods, when questioned by customs, qualifies for NAFTA. And so there's those rules and regulations that you have to look at. And the SAT, by the way, it's Service Administration of Tax, or Tax Services Administration, but that's converting that into English. I'm sure Lalo can say it in Spanish better, but that's basically like the IRS or Revenue Canada part of Mexico's government. It's the tax authority. And the reason they're doing audits, just like the U.S. is doing audits, just like Canada is doing audits of the older NAFTA claims, is to ensure that people are paying the appropriate duties and taxes. So what's the objective of customs in each country? There's two objectives. One is to ensure nothing that would be detrimental to your local economy and the people of your country, is to not let something in that would be harmful to your economy nor your people. The second is to collect revenue. So in this case, the tax side of things in Mexico is still looking at things along with the others. So that's what's happening there, is that you still have to comply with that for another several years yet.
Right. And so like Andy said, I mean, the law says when it was written for NAFTA is that if you do claim something for NAFTA, no matter where, US, Mexico, or Canada, if you claim it as NAFTA, you could get audited up to 5 years after that claim. So even though it ended in 2020, July of 2020, right? You have through July or June 30th of 2025 to still prove that it was NAFTA. Mexican customs, US customs, and Canadian customs can come to you and say, hey, remember that shipment back in whatever, before July 2020. Okay, so they could say June of 2020. Remember that shipment? I need to see proof that this was NAFTA, and you should be keeping your records. This is no different from any other import or export or anything having to do with trade compliance. You still need to keep your records. Just because NAFTA is gone doesn't mean that your obligation is gone. And in many cases that happens because they're so backlogged. There's just so many revisions or audits, or call it what you want, that are still pending from many years ago, that so basically today, 5 years ago, if you claim NAFTA, you're clear, you're good. You're good because your 5 years have elapsed. But after this, forget it. You know what I mean? Before this, I'm sorry, not before this. Going forward, 5 years, just make sure you're not within that 5-year window, because you still can get audited.
Attention all trade geeks. The G-Tech conference is coming to Oklahoma City and you won't want to miss it. Mark your calendars for July 30th through August 1st and join us for a jam-packed event with expert-less sessions and networking opportunities. And guess what? The Simply Trade podcast will be recording live at the event. Don't miss this unique chance to be featured on a show and share your insights with fellow trade professionals. We'll see you in Oklahoma City, where trade compliance takes center stage. Go to www.ncbfaa.org and become part of the action.
Well, I was just going to say, and as an action, here's something that folks you ought to take a look at is just do a test of your own record retention systems, where everybody talks about record keeping and all that. Well, test it out. And it's not that you're putting things away and it's kind of like putting them in a file cabinet or you're filing them electronically. The issue is going to be, how effective is your record retention by going and retrieving information that you need when you need it. So literally, I would highly recommend going back 5 years, go in to work with your audit, your accounting department with the audit side of things or whatever, and look at some purchase orders from 5 years ago and look to see if you can track down the entries that came in for imports tied to those purchase orders, because that's what customs is going to do. And if I were you, I'd highly recommend doing that and testing it out. And if you can't get it, your IT folks, everybody's, oh, we can't get it, it's too old. It's like, it's not good enough. So
you need to make sure that, not only that, Andy, but also the proof behind it. We've been talking a lot about forced labor and having to prove that nobody built this under forced labor, right? Meaning like time cards and all that. That's something normally customs doesn't take care of, but you need to have that proof. Same thing with USMCA. I'm sorry. It's the same thing with NAFTA. All those solicitation that you did from your vendors to build that product and claim NAFTA at the time, you would hope that you kept a record of all those letters or solicitation, certificate of origins, that it was formerly CF 434. I think that's what it was. CF 434s. Those were the NAFTA certificate of origin. But anyway, that you would have kept them, because if you didn't, that's going to be very hard for you to prove, because that vendor is going to say, I don't know what I did 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I can't. You know what I mean? So anyway.
And it's funny because that reminds me, last time I was sitting in, I think it was Trudy. Trudy does, no, wait, was it the USMCA course? Yeah.
Yeah, she does USMCA for us. Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And people do ask like very high risk questions sometimes, where she's like, okay, email me, because it's funny because obviously, yeah, and I have these questions, but I can only imagine what these people have to ask and at what risk it is, because there's so much that could happen. Like if you're audited and you're you're in the wrong or you didn't do something right because you didn't know how to, that's a lot of money there. So I would advise everyone to take that course because it's so good. You will.
If you're dealing with if you're dealing with North American, NAFTA and USMCA, Trudy's course is highly suggested, and look it up through the Global Training Center. But that's one. There's other courses out there, but I'm telling you, that's a very effective one, and she is a very effective instructor.
Yeah, she's so fun. I know, she's so fun. I love hearing her speak. It's very interactive. So, okay, well, now I understand this. See, this is why we need these conversations. So much easier to understand. All right, so for the second article, we have free shipping is becoming less free. And this article was kind of fun for me. This one of the three that we have today seemed to be the easiest for me to get because it also had stores that I have shopped before, and I understand what it means when, they say that you have to buy up to a certain amount of money to get shipping for free. So now apparently companies are increasing this price because shipping companies are increasing their prices. So obviously they kind of have to balance that. Though I feel like, I know big businesses, obviously they're all about making money, but what about the consumers in this situation? Because first of all, why are they increasing their prices? And then third of all, I feel like they have such a profit margin that increasing the prices is just selfish. But that's just me speaking. I understand if I was the owner, I'd probably do the same thing. But as a consumer, I don't understand it. But I do have a question towards why the prices are being raised.
Well, to that extent, all right, we've talked about this before, is stop and think. You asked a great question. I believe it was last week when we were talking about where it's either last week or 2 weeks ago. And we were talking about how manufacturing orders had dropped off, right? And it was significant. And you gave a good example of saying, well, it seems like people were shopping. When you go to the mall, people are shopping. And it's like, yes. However, look at the number of bags that they're, what are they buying? Beforehand, when they had more discretionary income, people would buy, a whole outfit, a blouse, pants, shoes, and all that. Now they may be just getting a blouse. Why? Because prices have gone up. Inflation. This is where the rubber meets the road, where literally inflation is just eating away at the discretionary income. And people are maxing out their credit cards. In the U.S., the Fed just raised today another quarter point on the interest rates. So therefore, that means that credit cards will cost even more. The credit card interest rates now are at a 22-year high, and it's going to cause more and more problems. So when you're talking about the profit margins, people are looking at the businesses like, well, why can't you just keep your profits or prices the same? Fuel prices for delivery have gone up, have they not? And so it costs a lot more.
Well, they're going up and down. I feel like they're just doing they're actually
but compared to when they started these programs and they did this, it is significantly higher. There's no doubt. You can say as compared to this time last year, well, yeah, this time last year, Amazon did not start their Prime program. Amazon Prime started many years ago. So yeah, of course, you're going to see those go up. But not only that, it used to be where in order to keep those free shipping with membership, like with Amazon Prime and maybe even the Walmart and everybody who says free shipping, there a couple of things. Prices do go up, but another thing is it used to be that Prime guaranteed you shipment in 2 days. You used to get your stuff in 2 days. I know in Europe, and like my
It
daughter
was
lives
like
in
I get my stuff the next day.
right. In San Francisco, my daughter lives in San Francisco. My
Oh
son
yeah,
lives in Seattle. They get it sometimes the same darn day,
yeah,
So
yeah.
it depends. I'm talking about normal people. Y'all are not normal. Anyway, normal people like Andy out in Memphis and me in El Paso. That yeah, we have distribution centers, but they don't carry every single piece that is on their catalogs. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is we're not getting it in 2 days. Sometimes I'm getting it free, but in 5 days. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things. And I also read that the average cost for you to get free shipping, of course, it's outside of being a member from like Amazon or Walmart or whatever, the average cost has gone up from $52 to $64 for the retailer to feel not obligated, comfortable giving you free shipping, meaning their margins have gone down. So they need to make a sale of $64 for them to feel okay, I'm all right giving free shipping. So you got to realize that also, their costs have gone up. So that's their.
I wonder if I understand. I mean, I understand that they have to do that. Like it makes sense with all these prices rising. But I wonder if they just lower the prices, that consumers will be like, I understand it, because the marketing behind, you can't lower the prices too much. It won't value the product, and you have a product that you believe in, blah blah blah. And I understand if you lower it too much, it's a whole mess. But I just don't know how to fix it. This article was confusing me, and I don't know if that makes me look a little silly, or I don't know. I don't want to say stupid, because people just this is not my thing. I don't read these things every day. So when I do read it, you'll see it in the news and you're like, oh, that's terrible, but you don't read the full article. Well, with these, I read the full article and I'm more confused than just reading the actual headline. So, so usually I just keep it at the headline. But we're going into this article. So it says that as Japan aligns with US chip curbs on China, some in Tokyo feel uneasy. So we've talked about this because we talked about the whole chip situation, and that, China is, can do some damage with weapons and whatnot. And these chips are crucial for their use, or their whole ordeal, whatever they want to do. So I have a few questions because I'm confused as to what Japan has to do with what Tokyo is doing and whatnot. I wrote down questions. Oh yeah, why is Tokyo not aligned with the U.S. is my first question.
I think you misunderstood that, because they are.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think you misread that, because they're saying.
Maybe I said not with China. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
Oh, because they said so Tokyo said that they cannot put sanctions on a country if they don't have any conflicts with that country, correct?
Right. So what they're saying is that they're afraid that it's going to unnecessarily incite Beijing,
Start a conflict?
China. So yeah, they don't want to start trouble where there is no trouble, in other words. But they do recognize that they need to limit the export and control the exports of certain equipment used to make semiconductors. So chips, let's just say chips, and Japan just happens to be the supplier of 23 different pieces of equipment that are used specifically for semiconductor chips. Not only that, but they can also be used for military use. And that's why they're saying, we're going to limit this. We're not going to export it, that we're going to, and the Netherlands are jumping in on this as well.
I did read that, and that made me even more confused, because I'm like, okay, we're going from Japan, US, all the way to the Netherlands, which is like right across from me, next to me actually. And I'm like, what? I'm so confused now. So and the Netherlands, it's weird to me, because that seems like such a peaceful country, and now they're jumping into this big chip deal that's happening with China. So yeah, what's happening? I don't get it.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that why do you think, as far as these chips and the equipment to manufacture them, why do you think these governments are moving to not send those to China?
Oh, well, because obviously they know China has, or not obviously knows that, but they don't have good intentions. Or
Okay,
they're
so
using the
take that
chips
a
for
step
something that
further.
we don't want them to use. They could use them against us.
There you go. There you go. So that's what's happening here, is that Japan and the Netherlands and, of course, the U.S. with their regulations are putting forth efforts to restrict these equipment and the chips and the ability to manufacture them, restricting that from going to China. So that's what's happening. That's all of this is saying. So Tokyo, Japan is as they're saying it and talking about it, that is the main thing, is they're aligning with us. So China is an aggressive competitor in the global market. And so you got to understand it. And they are competing on multiple levels, from a military perspective, from an economic perspective, from a cultural perspective, from a geographic perspective. So, that's one of those things where, it's just a tough way to go. I hate to say it,
So
but that's it.
also, okay, with all these, I wouldn't say it's a sanction, or would that be a sanction? Considered a sanction if they do that?
In a sense, yeah, it's they're sanctioning it to say it is a sanction in the event that you're restricting that commodity from being sent to China.
Okay, so what does China do about that?
Well, they're circumventing it. They're trying to get their hands on that technology. So that's what's happening. Hence, and you remember when we talked about currency, where China was wanting to replace the US dollar as the global currency. And I say global for global exchange rates and things of that nature. Well, what that does is it circumvents the banking industries so that China can purchase goods from other countries using the Chinese yuan and not the US dollar, which is tracked. Hence, now we got a scenario here with the chips. They're trying to get their hands on that. They'll work through it. It'll be everything from espionage, corporate espionage, hacking, to whatever else, false companies, shell companies, whatever.
That's actually my
buying it and
question.
sending.
Do you think that there's black markets for it? Or I don't know if that's called a black market, but if there's people from the US that will take measures, or for money, kind of get those chips, and so
We
do you
saw it with
think,
Russian. I mean, yeah, they're going to
yeah,
do it for China too.
and are those people usually caught, or
Well, you got to be very careful, but yeah, they usually are.
Yeah. Usually tracks it down, and that's part of the issue there, is that as they're going through with all that, again, goes back to the compliance. What are you doing? Who are you selling to, and all of that? You don't want your goods ending up in the wrong hands. So
yeah, and that's why security measures too, and those companies that, like you said, hackers and stuff. I mean, those companies have to have some crazy security. And is that what ITAR is for? Or is that not? Is that no? EAR?
part of it.
ITAR?
That's part of it. Some of the regulation. You've got to vet which means you got to check out who you're doing business with, from a customer, from a supplier, just doing business. That's why you have restricted party screening, denied party screening. That's what comes back. So the action, based on what we're seeing here, is China now is restricting this. Netherlands are restricting the same type of commodities. If you're doing business internationally, you better check out who you're doing business with and see if they're showing up on any of those lists, because that's a way that they'll come up as being directly involved with certain Chinese situations or indirectly with somebody else and be associated with it. So,
Well, I have a fun fact about. I guess it'll go into the second article, but it's a good thing. It's good. So you know how our economy is a little struggling.
Yeah.
I know Lalo knows what I'm gonna say.
No, I don't.
Okay, well, there's an artist. Now you know, and she actually has her last 6, I think, concerts in California starting this week. So she has 2 more weeks left. Anyways, so
I
there's
know
a
you're
fun...
talking about Dolly Parton, right?
No. Talking about Taylor
Okay.
Swift.
Taylor Swift.
I know.
So
You're talking about Taylor Swift, aren't you?
I am,
I know. I'm
because
teasing you.
I know. It's a joke. I know it. So I found a fun article on Insider, and I've seen this obviously, but I needed to, I've seen this on social media, but I needed to get some hard evidence for you guys. I can't just give you a TikTok over here. So actually, this was her tour was caught the eye of the Fed. I guess that's what it says here. And they are predicting that she will add $4.6 billion to the U.S. economy.
$1 billion.
Yeah. So there we go. And there goes all of our rates, because they're going down because of her. Just kidding. But you know what?
It's stimulating business. It's like everything from selling T-shirts and CDs and trinkets and all that. The tickets themselves, the venues, the people that are working those venues.
Las
then
Vegas
you've got the
said
food. Yep.
that they didn't have this much traffic. Well, I don't know how to say it. The last time they had that much traffic was before COVID. This is the first time when she came to town they saw those numbers before COVID, and they had never seen those numbers again. And Taylor, when she went to, I think it was Vegas, that they saw those numbers, like they hadn't seen those numbers in years.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, Elvis Presley had those kinds of numbers that were very impressive as far as the number of people attending shows and all that in Vegas. The numbers are, of course, as dollars were smaller because of the time frame. But all that to say, I mean, Taylor Swift is her shows are like she was like 2 or 3 shows in the same location. It's like unreal.
Fun fact: I have some tickets. I got it in Munich here, but I'm gonna also try for Paris. All right. So that was my fun fact of the day. And if you get to watch her, then you should, because it's amazing. I mean, I'm sure it is. I haven't even seen it, but I feel like I have. So anyways, these 3 articles were definitely a little bit of a challenge for me, but I'm glad we had Andy and Lalo kind of talking over them and giving me the bullet points, I would say, and a little bit more of their knowledge to make me comprehend those articles a little bit better. So I'm smarter today, and I hope you are too. So I hope you have a great Monday, I believe, and we will see you next week. So thank you, Lalo. Thank you, Andy. And like, subscribe, and do all those things. Let us know what you think of the show. All right. See you then. Bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.